What do you think would have been the real reason for the invasion onto Iran?
Look, this is the question that everyone's going to debate for all eternity because there's no real answer. Even today, Trump and his team have not articulated a real reason, okay? So originally the pretext was Iran's uranium enrichment program. So remember, like this started when Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, went to the Iranians and gave three impossible demands to the Iranians. The three impossible demands were zero uranium enrichment, even for civilian purposes. You can't do that. Two is you have to let go of your proxies. You have to abandon your proxies. And then the third, of course, is to reduce or limit your ballistic missiles program. So these are like impossible demands. You know, and like the historical equivalent is when the Romans started the Third Punic War by going to Carthage and saying, you know what, we had a peace treaty where you would no longer threaten us, but now you have these hegemonic expansionist tendencies. So to prove that you're peaceful, surrender all your weapons to us. And to the chagrin of the Romans, the Carthaginians surrendered all their weapons. And the Romans like, what is this crap? We were ordered by the Senate to start a war to destroy Carthage. And we came up with this stupid, impossible demand that the Carthaginians could not possibly meet. But they did meet it. They gave us all the weapons, and now we have to come up with another pretext. And so the pretext came up with is, oh, you guys are port city. We're afraid of your naval power. So move inland by 10 kilometers, and we won't bother you anymore. And that's like, you know, so I mean, they just kept on pushing the goalposts, and that was happening with the United States and Iran, where it was clear the United States was looking for any pretext to start a war. But what surprised everyone was, before the war started, the Omani foreign minister, okay, and this is like a few hours before actually the bombing started, the Omani foreign minister went on TV and said to the American audience, the Iranians have agreed to zero uranium enrichment, even for civilian purposes, which they said was an absolute red line. And not only that, but they're now willing to negotiate proxies and ballistic missiles. The Iranians have given us everything. And now Trump can win the Nobel Peace Prize. And a few hours later, of course, the bombing started, okay? So this nuclear pretext is complete nonsense. Also remember, the envoys are Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And Steve Witkoff went on TV during the negotiation and said to, I believe it was Megyn Kelly. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. And he said the Iranians are like weeks away from weapons grade uranium enrichment. So he was telling the world the Iranians are not negotiating in good faith. He was sabotaging his own negotiations. All right. So his job was not to actually get a deal. His job was to make sure no deal could happen. So the nuclear pretext is not relevant. Before these talks, remember, there were these protests in Iran, and Trump tweeted out that the Iranians should let these protesters protest, and America will protect their right to protest. And so there was real fears that Trump would launch airstrikes to protect these protesters. But then, the Iranians cracked down, and then Trump never mentioned these protesters ever again. Okay, so that would have been a pretext, saying, "Look, we're trying to promote democracy in Iran," but he never mentioned it again. And now the pretext, the excuse is, and this is what Marco Rubio told the press. He said that, why did we attack? Well, we got word the Israelis were going to attack first. And if they attacked, then the Iranians would have retaliated against both Israel and us, the Americans. So to protect our American service people, to protect our American bases, we had to attack Iran first. Like, and so like,
I saw that.
Yeah, they cannot articulate, even today, a clear purpose and reason. And you could argue they don't want to do that because they want to maintain maximum lethality. They want to maintain maximum flexibility because their real purpose is to destroy Iran as a viable nation state. They want to break Iran up into different ethnic enclaves that could never threaten Israel again. But they cannot justify why they would want to destroy Iran, to basically turn Iran into another Syria or Libya, because they can't justify it to the American public. And so rather than, make up a stupid excuse, because if they make up a stupid excuse, for democracy or whatever, then they're bound by that excuse. So they're like, we'll just do it. Okay. So right now, the big question is like, why is this happening? And again, historians are going to debate this for all of eternity, and no one's going to have a clear answer. There will be never will can this emerge. Okay. So let me speculate on different possibilities. All right.
Right.
Okay. So the most logical, practical explanation is, okay, the Americans didn't expect Russia to invade Ukraine. And when they invaded Ukraine, through the rules-based national order, the Americans tried to restrain Russia, okay, through sanctions, by cutting Russia off the SWIFT banking system. They told the Europeans never to buy Russian energy anymore. Okay, so the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up. The Americans and the Europeans confiscated $300 billion of Russian assets. All right, they're still frozen today. And the point was to use the rules-based national order to punish Russia. Problem is that it blew up in everyone's face, okay? What it did was it accelerate the collapse of the rules-based national order. More people started to withdraw their assets from American and European banks because they were no longer seen as credible, as reliable, as safe. It caused the implosion of the German economy. The German economy has never really recovered. Europe is suffering under economic recession right now. And Russia is stronger and stronger. The economy is doing well. They've moved on to a manufacturing weapons economy, and like people are doing well. And we know in China because they come here all the time as tourists, right? So the Russian economy is doing very, very well. So basically, Ukraine was a huge embarrassment for the Americans. And so the empire needs now to prove it's still the empire. And the way you do that is you attack Iran. Why? Well, if you attack Iran, first of all, you're able to control Middle East oil, okay, as an answer to Russia's control of Ukraine. Because remember, Ukraine and Russia together controls 1/3 of the world's carbohydrates. And so basically Russia can choose to starve out the Middle East and Europe, okay? So resources are really important. Another thing that's really important is trade access, Strait of Hormuz. And by controlling Iran, what you do is you negate the possibility of a Russia, Iran, China grand trade alliance, which can just alienate the Americans, right? Because the Americans control trade through the sea lanes. But if you have this heartland of trade, then you don't need to worry about the Americans anymore. Okay. And then the world will gravitate towards this new block, this new access. So America needs to destroy Iran to make sure this problem never arises. And the third thing, is that for the longest time, Iran was too defiant, right? So in 1979, the Iranian revolution overthrew the Shah, which was a CIA puppet. And so for the longest time, the Americans wanted to impose its authority back into Iran because the empire has a long memory, right? So that's the first possibility, that it's all about maintaining the empire, okay? But there are problems with this explanation. The major problem is that the Iranians were perfectly happy to trade with you, right? So you didn't have to go to war against them. All you had to do was remove the sanctions against them. And they would have been perfectly happy to join your bloc and just abandon the Chinese and the Russians, okay? I mean, like, people are practical. If I'm going to make more money with you, I'm going to do business with you, right? So there's absolutely no reason to go to war. In fact, it would have been better off for the Americans if they just signed a free trade pact with Iran. The Iranians would have been probably happy to do that, okay? So I think there's maybe historians will see the first as the standard explanation, but I think there are issues with that explanation, okay? So that's the first explanation. The second explanation is that Trump is the chaos president. So we're going back to the Civil War in the United States, right? So if a war were to break out and America were to maybe lose this war, or America would become bogged down in this war, then Trump would have emergency war powers, which means he's allowed to cancel elections. He's allowed to deploy National Guard all across America. He's able to monitor elections. So remember, during the State of the Union address, Trump emphasized how important it was to pass a Safe America Act to make sure that only legal citizens could vote, and that meant checking their IDs. So he's trying to basically better control the outcome of elections. And with this war in Iran, he can do that. If there are protests, there are riots because of this war, because Trump is drafting young men to go die off in Iran, that benefits him, right? And he's got a lot of supporters. The military industrial complex is for this war because it means more money. The Silicon Valley people are for this war because it means more power for them. Even though the Democrats are for this war because, first of all, the Israel lobby, AIPAC, is very strong in America. A lot of these Democrats are extremely pro-Israel. Chuck Schumer. But I would say the majority of Democrats are very pro.
Yeah, both
Israel.
sides of the aisle.
Right. And also, like, they recognize that, eventually someone has to start a war against Iran. And if Trump wants to do it, let him be the scapegoat, okay? So not, throughout this process, the Democrats never really opposed him. In fact, they gave a lot of signals to support, to suggest that they were supporting this war. Remember, so Tom Massey and Ro Khanna,
Tom Massey,
asked for a war powers vote in Congress, and they delayed it to Tuesday, and the attacks happened on Saturday. So they knew exactly when the attacks would happen, and they scheduled it to make sure it was no longer relevant. And then they still had the debate, and it was not able to pass because 4 Democrats voted against it. But like what people don't recognize is that it's all fixed, man.